when it comes to the Booger Ray fighters like the Kenshiro Terajis of the world, no one tends to never have a conversation, and this is very important, about the fighters that he's beaten. Now they'll do some research, and they'll go to BoxRec and they'll look at the names of the fighters that Kenshiro's beaten, then they'll talk about them. But Kenshiro, this guy, when you go to Kenshiro's resume, you look at the fighters that he's beaten, and you ask yourself, okay, well, if these guys were so good, why hasn't the mainstream boxing media got a hold of these fighters? You see, we learned about these Booger Ray fighters in the past. I mean, Roman Gonzalez being a Booger Ray fighter didn't stop him from getting fame. Our boxing media love to create a story about some foreign fighter more than they do about their own fighter. So if these fighters are so great that Kenshiro was beaten, then why haven't the boxing mainstream media got a hold of them? That's a question that many of you guys should ask, and I stand on that. All these champions, right? That's what the Kenshiro fans love to say. All these champions that Kenshiro's beaten, then why haven't those champions got the attention that all those champions should have gotten if they were such good fighters? Because good fighters don't stay hidden for very long. They don't. Someone will discover them. Someone will find them. Someone will, hype them up. Someone will talk about them. Someone will give them some type of attention. But good fighters don't stay hidden for very long. You see, the truth is that, Junto has beaten all these champions is because all those champions are available for each other. Championship fights are not made that easy when you have these crop of elite fighters in one division versus an okay fighter fighting amongst a bunch of garbage fighters, right? That okay fighter can easily get a championship fight against someone who isn't a good fighter that's holding on to a belt. That is Kenshiro Teraji's case. That is the Juntos of the world's case. That is predominantly a New Way's career. When you got a bunch of guys who are just terrible fighters but got a hold of a belt, championship fights get made easier at the Booger weight divisions. You know what I'm saying? It does. There's not a lot of depth in the Booger weight division. There's a lot of fighters in the Booger weight division, but in terms of talent, elite fighters, there's not a lot of depth. If there was a lot of depth in those Booger weight divisions, then you wouldn't have these belts being passed around as much as it does. An okay fighter wouldn't be racking up all these belts in the Booger weight divisions. You know what I'm saying? When you look at the weight classes past 126, you see that it takes longer for these champions to fight each other. That's because when it comes to talent, there's depth. When you look at the featherweight division, there's depth in terms of talent. And that's why it's taking so long for these champions at 126 to start mixing it up with each other. Unless you have a fighter that has power, that has pull, then you'll have that particular fighter, basically getting everything in line. Kind of like what Devin Haney did at 135. Okay? But you don't really have that in most of these weight classes. So when you get these smaller fighters that fights at the Booger weight division, you'll have an okay fighter like a Kenshiro taking advantage of these garbage fighters, in those Booger weight divisions. Because Kenshiro is an okay fighter, but he's not a good fighter. And the fighters that he's beaten are not even good enough to be called decent. They're garbage. This is why you don't hear anything about these fighters. Sure, the fighters that Kenshiro's beaten to become champion are probably champion, but what kind of resistance or how much resistance did these fighters have to go through to become champion? Probably none, because there's not enough depth in terms of talent at the Booger weight division. There's not enough resistance to call these guys down there good, because it takes resistance to make a fighter great, and you don't have that at the Booger weight division. You don't have that. Again, you have maybe 3 or 4 okay fighters down at the Brookerweight division. Okay? And Kenshiro, he's taking some L's. Okay? This is why Kenshiro is not pound for pound. He shouldn't be pound for pound. He shouldn't even be close to that damn list. Junto neither. Okay? But they're placed there. Alright? Because of pandering. Boxing loves to pander. And it's okay to pander. That's how you make the sport grow. Okay? You make the sport grow by pandering. And if you look at the list, if you look at the pound for pound list, you will see that, you know, fighters from damn near, you know, each corner of the globe are on this damn pound for pound list. That's because it's a pandering list. The pound for pound list is not based on what it used to be based on. The pound for pound list is based on marketing, popularity. How can I get the most money out of a certain nation or country? That's what the pound for pound list is based on. These fighters ain't got to do much unless that fighter is a BOK American fighter. Okay? Unless that fighter is a BOK American fighter, their standards is still the same as it was in the 90s and the early 2000s. But the fighters elsewhere, all they got to do is beat half a champion. They'd be on the pound for pound list. It's for a fact.